I want to get started, Corey, with, is there anybody, that's a lottery pick, a projected lottery pick that comes to mind to you that you're now lower on when it comes to their potential in the NBA with how physical things have been this postseason?
Yeah, I think watching the playoffs, one of the guys, and he's been blowing up the boards right now, just rising, being rumored to go as high as 3, is Tre Johnson from Texas. And, when I say that I've gotten lower on Tre, it's not that I am out on him as a prospect or that I don't like him or I don't think he's talented. I think if you watch him for 5 minutes on a YouTube highlight mix, you're going to see this kid is talented as hell. But when we're watching the playoffs and you're talking about that physicality, some of the things he struggles with are dealing with physicality. It's, can he get to the basket, absorb contact, and finish through that contact? There's questions about that. Can he, when he's walled off on a drive, use his body to, get an advantage? There's questions about that. Defensively, what is that going to look like? And, that's just kind of, from a physicality perspective. I think one of the other things that we talk, that we're learning from these playoffs is that you also have to be somebody who is a very quick decision maker and isn't playing like a lot of one-on-one, just strictly looking for your shot, but it's, potentially also making plays for your teammates. And I get a little nervous with Tre there. I know that Tre is a talented passer. I'm not denying that. I've seen him make high-level reads, and I'm talking about in person. I've seen that were really impressive. But to me, it seems like a last resort with Tre, that he doesn't want to do it unless he absolutely has to when he sees 2 or 3 defenders show up. And I think that's the kind of thing that, outside of the physicality, makes me question just how high a player like Tre Johnson should be taken if we're looking at it through the lens of 16 games. Because, I look at a guy like Tyler Hero, and in a specific role, you see that Tyler Hero can be very valuable in the playoffs where he's not the number one guy. When Jimmy was there and, they were making their deep runs, that guy looked like a valuable piece. But you throw him as the number one option on a playoff team, and all of a sudden, it brings a lot more questions. And those questions for me become, well, how high do you take a player like that? So, and it's not, I think Tre has avenues and ways in which he can get there and be a 16-game player. It's just, is he willing to be that guy? Is he willing to do that? Or does he see himself more in the veins of somebody who's going to have close to 20 shots a game? And that's kind of what worries me about Tre as a 16-game prospect.
It's interesting with Tre because I interviewed him and, I like him. Like, first of all, I like him. I think he's a good kid. I think he's got the right approach and right mindset and all that. He wants to be good. I think he genuinely loves basketball and he wants to be good. With him, I do think he's going to be one of those guys where situation is going to be pivotal to determining who he becomes as a player. Because, Corey, you're right with some of the concerns with him. If you look at my draft guide, some of my concerns with him, I note defense, no da with him. He doesn't have great strength. He doesn't have great size. He can become a target. He also is just like, he's aloof at times. The effort and focus comes and goes. The shot selection on offense with him at Texas, he didn't get to the rim a lot, did not absorb contact well. He's very much a perimeter-oriented player. So everything you said, I agree with. However, he is a movement player. He's a movement shooter. He's comfortable in motion. At Link Academy in high school, we did see a bit more of the playmaking willingness. He was asked to score more at Texas. And so I'm very much split with him because on one hand, it's like, well, I could see him playing for the Pacers. I could see him as part of that offense, and maybe he grows and becomes this guy who it feels empowered on defense and uses his traits to become a competent defender on top of being able to play with motion and play with speed. But on the other hand, it's like, well, what if he falls into a bad situation? And like, what if he's in Washington and he's playing next to Jordan Poole? I don't know if he's going to learn some great habits over the long term to become the player that he needs to be to be one of those 16-game players. And so I'm split with him, Corey. I lean kind of both directions. It really depends on where's he going to end up. Like Tre Johnson, I just hope he lands in one of the ideal situations. Is there a team that you would feel better about his outcome into the future where you're like, okay, Tre Johnson landed here. Maybe I'll look wrong, but that's okay.
I mean, certainly San Antonio, if we're talking top of the draft, right? If that was, but honestly, I think Charlotte, I can make an argument both ways for too, because I obviously
next to LaMelo and Brandon Miller, they need leadership too. They need that.
They do need leadership. You hope that the coach, their new coaching staff, their new front office is kind of having a top down approach from that. Who knows what, LaMelo's future holds there too. I don't know if I would pencil him in as definitely going to be the guy running the show next year. But stylistically, a guy like LaMelo who makes everybody better, and would move Tre off of the ball, especially because you're going to get Brandon Miller on ball reps. So having two other guys who can, play, I think, a synergistic style. I think Brandon Miller is a really good passer too. Maybe that's something, especially there's not anybody in particular in his way positionally that is going to prevent him from having any runway. I do think that would be an interesting fit. But obviously, like you said, if he ends up there, you do worry about, the leadership there. I mean, Washington would worry me too. I mean, honestly, that's the thing. I look at the top of the draft and, obviously he'd be great in Dallas, playing off of those stars, but Dallas isn't going to take him number one.
For sure.
It just, the board I think is weird. I'm from New York. I look at a team like Brooklyn. What would make him different in his play style than Cam Thomas coming in? And I know that that's a comp that he's gotten a lot, but I think it's apt, right? So I know I like him better as a prospect than Cam. I think he's, has more potential, especially given his physical tools. To me, it's murky. I wish that Detroit was bad again, and because I think he would have slid in perfectly next to Cade. We saw Malik Beasley and how he thrived. Like, I think he needs to go to a situation like that. And like you said, where there is already players that are established, but it's going to be very reliant on what situation he walks into.
In your draft guide, you have Tyler Hero, Malik Monk, Bradley Beal as the comps for him. I also have Tyler Hero on my big board, and I added Ray Allen as like the top of the top end potential outcomes for him. And that's who Tre Johnson compares himself to. I asked him, what's your best NBA comparison? He says Ray Allen. I mean, maybe that's fed to him by his agents, but it was interesting because he is one of the best shooters in the draft. Shooting is of the utmost importance in today's league. He's very comfortable on the perimeter. So I'm unchanged with Tre Johnson. I still think he belongs in the top 5, but I very much understand the concerns with him. I think another guy teams are like a bit split on as well would be Jeremiah Fears, a guard out of Oklahoma, freshman there, very clutch shot maker this past season, averaged almost 17 points per game, 4 assists per game. I have Jamal Murray, Jordan Poole as my comps for him in my draft guide. With Jeremiah Fears, are you higher or lower on him right now with what you're seeing in this postseason?
I think I dropped him a little bit. I have a lot of the same kind of concerns about Jeremiah as I do about Tre, in just that I wonder especially for Jeremiah, what he looks like in a more off-ball role. I do think he's a better shooter than his percentage indicates from 3. Just because he's comfortable taking those tough shots off the bounce, and, his free throw percentage is good. And as far as the physicality, he's not afraid to embrace it getting to the line, because he gets to the line a ton. But, if there's a touch issue there, and then how comfortable he's just going to be, potentially playing off multiple creators, because that's what we're seeing in the playoffs. We're seeing like these quick decisions, guys who are comfortable working on the ball, off the ball, staying in motion, taking advantage of advantages that other guys create for them, and not killing the flow of the offense. And, I wonder if Jeremiah Fears is a little bit more in the vein of like these guys who are a little more old school, and that they have to have the ball in their hands and play in a high usage. The thing that reels you back in is that he is so young, and he still has so much room to grow. And, he's another guy who reclassed and should just be preparing for his prom. So, he is like a worthy swing, but you look at his size and you look at the way that, I think a lot of teams want to upsize. And a lot of these, and how many of these players are going to turn into Jalen Brunson. And maybe there's a path for Jeremiah Fears to be Darius Garland, with the handle and the shot creation. But I do think that even that is a high bar, and that's not necessarily like a number one option. Darius Garland, has had to learn how to play off of another guy who is now the number one option. So he concerns me in just that I know he's going to put up points. I know there's going to be, like solid point, rebounds, assist production. Can he fit into a winning team is what I'm not sure of.
I think there's fair concerns there. And I think with some of these guys that you might be lower on, again, it's fit. Like with Fears, I have the Jamal Murray comp in there because I would love to see him paired with a big. Like get him in two-man game actions, get him in a situation where he's able to play on ball and off ball. And I agree with you. He shot 28% from three. I think he's a way better shooter than that. 80% plus good guy it looks great. The form looks great. 80% plus guy from the free throw line. Great touch from mid range. Great touch on his floater. I have no concerns there, but the lack of size is definitely a thing with him. And over the course of time, I think fit is going to matter too. And that's the thing with the board this year. Like you said with Tre Johnson, the way it fell, it's just like Charlotte, you got LaMelo already. Utah, you got Keontae George, you got Isaiah Collier, who had a really good year. Are you in with do you believe in those guys? Washington, the kind of a cleaner slate. New Orleans, who knows what's going to happen there? Brooklyn, they have two guys under contract. Are they going to fall that far even? So the way the board fell is very strange for some of those guys in that range. I don't know, like if you were doing a grade A draft, for some of these guys, it's like, well, I don't want to have Tre Johnson falling to number 9, but,
right?
But I don't have Jeremiah Fears falling that far. But that might have to be the case when you think about some of the best marriages between prospect and team.
Yeah, and every year we go, well, this guy can't fall. And then all of a sudden,
they do.
They do. He's getting selected at pick 21, like this, it happens. So I do wonder, like, because of the way the board fell, like, is there a chance that he just drops out of the lottery? I don't think that's out of the question. I'm much more confident that Tre, because I think he's already proven that, like you said, he has those Ray Allen kind of traits where he can play off ball because we've seen it. I don't know if we've seen it from Fears, and that would, I think, be the concern, because it just, like you said, you went through all the teams and it gets rough. I don't know at what point, like Portland, do they need a guy like him? They already have a couple of guys that have those questions in the backcourt. Like Houston, like I don't. They got Reed, who had an incredible statistical profile and actually had skills that they needed, and he struggled to see time on the court. It's just there's a lot of tough scenarios for these guys.
Well, I mean, you said something in passing there, Corey, about the ability to play on ball and off ball. What are some of the things you've observed in this postseason that are kind of informing how you're ranking some of these guys in the draft, like on ball, off ball, physicality? What's been on your mind as you watch the postseason?
I think that that quick decision making, playing 0.5 basketball, where when the ball swings your way, you're either going to pass, dribble, shoot. Like the ball's not going to stick with you. We look at the two teams that are in the finals, and I think OKC plays a little bit more of that style because SGA can, they could spread them out and go ISO. But the ancillary pieces on Oklahoma City, when the ball comes to them, they know what to do with it. They know that they're either going to put a shot up, or they're going to, attack the basket on the closeout, or they're going to make a quick one more. Like those guys make quick decisions, and they're two-way players. Indiana, like the same thing. Like that's why a guy like Benedict Mathurin maybe isn't, a guy who has found a consistent role there, because Ben Shepherd is a much quicker decision maker at a similar position. And, if you would have asked, like, who's the more talented prospect between those two, you would say Mathurin. He's a better athlete. He's more skilled, but he doesn't necessarily fit the direction that team wants to play. So I think when you look at the players that are going to be ancillary pieces, and there's so much talent in this league right now, dude, like it's so hard to be a number one option. It's so hard. And a lot of the number one options that we see weren't considered guys who could potentially be number one options. So I'm just looking at guys who I know are going to play winning basketball, not take anything off the table. When the ball swings their way, they're not going to throw the ball out of bounds or dribble it off their foot. Guys that have enough skill to not take things off the table, but bring simple ways that they could put stuff on the table. And that's whether that's catching and shooting or, making a slick one more pass or attacking on the second side of a ball screen. That's what I'm looking for.
You said something really interesting. You said the guys who became the number one options are a lot of the guys that we didn't expect to be number one options. SGA and Halliburton both had concerns about their handle and creation ability, right?
Yep.
Jokic a second rounder.
Jalen
Brunson, small second rounder. Giannis, middle of the first round.
Yep.
Just a big swing. Who knows what he's going to turn into. Tatum was a top pick, but people had concerns about his playmaking. He's become a very, very good playmaker. Edwards is a top pick as well, but lot of these guys, plenty of questions. I mean, a lot of these guys at the top of the league, there's questions about who they're going to be, or they were just late first or second round picks. It's just, and if you move down the board, there's not a lot of guys. Like you said, it's very, very hard to be a primary creator, to your point, to reach that threshold. It becomes, good player, but not primary option very, very quickly when you look at the top players in the league. So with that in mind, with what you said about you're looking for these guys that you feel really confident are gonna be contributing winners in good situations, who's somebody you're higher on as we're watching these playoffs?
I've gotten pretty high on Kon Knueppel. I think he is.
How high? Are you considering him at 3? Number 3 for Philly? How high?
I would consider him at 3 for Philly. Okay. If Philly's plan.
What about 2?
I don't think.
Would you trade down if you're the Spurs? No. Okay.
No, I believe in Dylan Harper pretty heavily.
Okay.
I've loved.
What about trading down and get an extra pick? Are you that high on Kon that you would even consider that, or no?
Depends on what that extra pick looks like. But
so
I'm pretty high on Kon. I would take him at
just wondering if you're thinking about it. That's all.
No, I think 3 is a completely viable option for him, especially given the fact that we probably think that Philly wants to win right away. I mean, you would think that with Embiid, as long as he's there, and Paul George, that you want to compete. If we're looking for a guy who we think could possibly step in at that and be ready at this point and play off of those guys seamlessly, I think Kon's a pretty safe bet for that. He's like the ultimate connecting glue guy. But I think he's got underrated self-creation ability. I know that, there wasn't a ton of dribble jumpers at Duke, but if you look at him pre-Duke, he was taking and making those shots. So I think that he gets there. And then you look at the rest of the shooting numbers, and, I just feel more confident about him over a guy like Tre Johnson, who I think he shares a lot of similarities to. Because I just think that his decision-making is a lot quicker. He's not always looking to get a bucket. He's looking to make the right play. Now, with Kon, there are concerns about him defensively, right? He didn't measure well at the combine. Height-wise, I think we expected him to measure what he did. If you just looked at him, you'd be like, all right, he's probably shorter than he's listed at Duke. But the wingspan's nothing to write home about. He's not super quick laterally. But I do think he has the feel or the IQ, however you want to classify it on that end, to be in the right spots. And he's competitive. He's strong. He's bulky. He's not going to get bullied around. Maybe as a rookie or a second-year player as he develops. But as soon as he starts hitting his stride and becoming, more of a veteran, he has the kind of body that's going to hold up. And I don't know. I think he's so smart, so fun to watch, and he's got untapped potential in other areas of his game. If you watched him and Malawach run ball screens, you're like, this dude's feel running pick and roll is really high level, but that wasn't really asked of him. But when you look at Duke's roster, they didn't have a point guard. Tyrese Proctor, we thought was this playmaking point guard coming in, and he never proved to be that. So Duke had to rely on Kon and Coop to make a lot of those high level reads, and they stepped up as freshmen. So I think that he's just a winning player who's going to play in a lot of winning basketball games. And I think he's got a shot to play earlier than a guy like Reed because he's got better size.
Yeah, better size. He only measured at 6'5", as you said, 6'7" wingspan. He's not especially long by any means, but the body, I feel confident with him becoming a guy who can survive defensively. And, you bring up the dribble jumper. with him. He did not shoot well off the dribble from three. Didn't shoot a lot of mid range, which was part of Shire's offense. But I just like you're betting on touch, man. The dude's a knockdown shooter off the catch. He's a knockdown free throw guy. He's knockdown, elite touch. And so with him, I think it's only a matter of time. Exactly. All caps. And with him, you're betting on it becoming, lethal sidestep, dribble jumper threes, a pull up out of pick and roll. I don't necessarily think he's going to be some ISO guy. I don't care if he becomes that. Like, to me,
right.
When I interviewed him, he said, what's your best comp? He's like, Klay Thompson. I would love to play like Klay Thompson. Like, yes, thank you. Please play like Klay Thompson. And you'll have quarters where you go off for 25, right? You go off for 30. Like, it's going to happen.
60 and 11 dribbles.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Kon, you can't rule him out, like, becoming that type of player. And so Kon Knueppel is one of those guys I also feel higher on as you've watched this postseason. I think Carter Bryant out of Arizona, that's a guy a lot of people are seeing him rise up, hit their boards. I currently have Carter Bryant ranked 17th on mine, so I'm not going quite as crazy. A lot of people have him in their top 10s right now, or at least in the lottery. But can you explain to me with Carter Bryant, what's the appeal with him? Why is he rising up boards throughout this process?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats, and that's the first question as somebody who's an outside observer of the draft, you have to ask, right? Like, what's so special about 6 points, 4 rebounds? But I think that he, I think he's got the legit size and the legit length to kind of be an OG Anunoby variant. Like, shout out to my guy Albert, who made that comp, and I love it because I look at the way that he plays, and I think he has a little bit of that kind of two-way potential where OG can kind of go off when you give him the ball, but he's not somebody who you need to give touches to. Like, when he gets it, he'll make something happen. But I also buy into like the work ethic, the buy-in. I'll tell you a story about Carter. In the 2023 Nike Hoop Summit, he got invited to be on the Portland Generals scrimmage team. And he was a junior in high school at this point, and he's playing against like the Ron Holland, Bronny James, DeJuan Wagner team. And, he took that team along with Dylan Jones, who was on that scrimmage team, to where the international team that was headlined by Ricochet, he took them down to the final buzzer. And usually that scrimmage team gets absolutely mollywopped. And he was competitive with these guys. And when the scrimmage was over against the U.S. team, and you could call it performative or whatever, but if it was performative, it was brilliant. As soon as that scrimmage ended, knowing that the entire gym is packed with NBA personnel, the first thing he did was go get shots up. Every other dude packed up, put their slides on, and left. Carter Bryant picked up a ball, started doing shooting drills. When, the next group came in, he moved to a side of the court that was being unused in the gym, and he started working on ball handling. So, like, this is just a kid who eats, breathes, sleeps ball. And if you watched Arizona, it's not just all tools. Like, they were better when he was on the court. Like, he should have played more. It was almost preposterous that he wasn't playing more. But as a guy who is able to play both ways, is a good decision maker, is a defensive event creator, and showed that he can knock down outside shots and like get a ball, pump fake, rip, 2 dribble, pull up. Like, I think that he's going to have avenues in which he can actually show more because he's going to be on the court because of the ancillary skills of playing off somebody. And when you get that runway, when you earn the trust of the coaching staff, it allows you to start building trust to do more. And I think that when we look back, he's going to be one of these guys that he's maximizing his tools.
First of all, that's a cool story. And with him, I don't think it's performative at all. Based on my understanding of, talking to people, like the work ethic, it seems to be very real with Carter Bryant. He seems to be a good kid. You're betting on character when you draft a prospect as much as you are betting on basketball skill. And so Carter Bryant, it seems like he's a good character bet as well. In the draft guide, I have Jeff Green as a comparison with him to, like, in other words, to nod to. Yeah, I mean, it's a good and bad thing. I nod to it in the sense that it's like, Jeff Green, longtime role player, very successful. But there's this old Kevin Garnett quote when they were both playing for the Celtics, and he's like, Kevin Garnett says, I always tell Jeff Green, I believe he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's just going to realize it himself. He's going to become that player.
Right.
He's going to reach his upside. And Jeff Green's always been a tease. He would score 45 one night and then 12 points the next night. With Carter Bryant, I just wonder if there's a tease there. Is he a tease? And that the upside is that not there, and you're only going to get this high-end role player, which is not a bad thing. That's why he feels safe. You're going to get a good role player there. But for the dreams of him becoming a star player, I'm not totally there with him. Like I feel like some people are with him being a star player.
I'm with you. And I think it goes to how high he gets drafted at that point.
With expectations.
Like Jeff Green was drafted, third in his class? Fifth, right?
He was in the trade with 07 draft with Ray Allen, yes.
So still, top 5 picks have a level of expectations that I think once you get out of the top 5, people are excited about that player, but they know that, the cream of the crop has already been selected, right? So I do think that the expectations, like if Carter's taken third, by Philly, then it's like, all right, now I see that he might do the tease thing where he shows the flashes. Like when Patrick Williams was drafted by the Bulls, right? And it was all on tools, right? Then you start getting yourself in trouble. But if he goes to Houston at 9 and he maybe does the things that Cam Whitmore is being asked to but refuses to do, now all of a sudden you start seeing a much clearer path for him to play that winning brand of basketball and living up to, the 9th or 10th pick in the draft.
And one other thing I like about Carter Bryant is the postseason performance. His last 6 games, conference tournament and NCAA tournament, shot over 40% from 3. He was great. They should have played him more, as you said.
Yeah.
Who else are you higher on throughout this process, Corey?
Well, I've gotten pretty high on Cedric Coward. I think I have him 10th on my board now. Yeah. I know. Yeah, I know you interviewed him, right? Like I met him when I was watching guys work out in LA a few weeks ago, and when I went to shake his hand, my hand disappeared. I was like, "Oh my god, this dude's got some mitts on him." But I love his story. I love, and he's a guy. We covered him 2 years ago as like a potential, like this guy's really talented. There's something there. And to see it kind of come to fruition. Now, he played 6 games this year, right? Like, so he's not without risk. But when you look at the Thunder, like, what's one of the things they've really valued outside of like this dribble pass shoot? They have length everywhere. And that plus 9 wingspan? It's 7'2" wingspan with huge mitts. And the fact that he's a knockdown shooter, just absolutely lit the nets on fire, NBA Jam style at the Combine. With his frame, like, he's just a guy that I could see if he ends up being a role player, he's going to be a star in his role. But again, like Carter Bryant, I think he's going to do the role player stuff, especially because he had to get it out the mud, being a D3 guy, making his name to where he was, committing to Duke and is now having so much positive feedback. He's staying in the draft. Like he's a guy that's going to be able to play in his role because that's what he's done. But he's got something about him that's special that makes you go, you know what? In the right situation, he could develop into more. Like he could be a star. Now, the fact that he did it only in 6 games, there's definitely risk there because he is a little bit of a mystery box. But I just think he has star potential, regardless of the fact that he's a little bit older, because he's got special tools and special character traits.
I think that's spot on, man. Like he's got a role player floor. Like you feel good about him as at worst, a 3-and-D plus guy. Guy who can knock down threes off the catch, make the right play off the dribble, be a tough, reliable, versatile defender. And with the handle flashes, the passing flashes over the course of time, who knows? Who knows what he could end up being? And that's why I've moved him all the way up to 5. That might be nuts because of the only 6
Kev,
games.
we talked about these guys who didn't have expectations to be top options, but they had something about them. And then you look back in retrospect and you go, oh, yeah, of course Jalen Brunson is a number 1 option. He won multiple championships and he put up you can look back at Cedric Coward and go, of course, he's got a 7'2" wingspan. He's a great shooter. He's got this, he looks like he was born in a lab to play ball.
Elite work ethic, elite story as well. Like your story matters. D3
totally
to Duke in a matter of 3-4 years. Like that's unheard of.
it's the Jimmy Butler route, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
If Jimmy was handed the keys to everything, he's not Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler had to lock himself in a cabin without internet, in that offseason to go from 13,
Yes.
point per game role player to 20 point per game star. Like, you have to have the perspective and the struggle that you went through to get to that point and understand what needs to be done. And I think that Coward has that.
Yeah, Coward definitely has that. I'm a big believer in him. Noa Essengue, one of the few players still playing right now. I gotta say, I have PTSD. Those orange jerseys, man. I want to rank Essengue so much higher than I have him. But man,
maybe if you were, taking his lefty point guard teammate, you could make those parallels there. But I think you're safe with Essengue. I think you're safe. If Saraf, we could draw some parallels with those orange jerseys. But Essengue's a little bit different, right? Like, he's a little different of a bet.
Much different. I'm much different. So I feel better with Essengue. Yes, I do. You're right.
Yeah, but you still have him, I think, at an pro pot there. With at rank 13.
Yeah,
because you could see the path, right? You could see him playing the Jaden McDaniels kind of role. You could see a Jeremy Grant outcome for him. And I think those are two guys that, he should be watching a lot of film on because, he's got very similar frames. I think he gets his offense very similarly to how Jeremy Grant got his offense as a young player before he developed these on-ball skills where he's, finding seams in the defense where he can cut for easy layups or getting out in transition, setting ball screens, and starting to be, I don't know if more reliable, but at least more confident as like a spot-up shooter. And Jaden McDaniels and, and Grant, they weren't good shooters coming into the league. And, I don't know if I'd still consider them great shooters, but they're capable outside shot makers. And I think that Essengue's mechanics and his youth and his free throw percentage make you go, all right, I think he's going to get there in the spot up scenario. And if he does that, he's going to be able to, raise and rip to the hoop where he'll be at the rim and a couple of dribbles. And he's tough as hell. I mean, his free throw rate is crazy. Like, so you look at a skinny guy and you don't have to worry about it being tough. I think he had like a 75 or 80% free throw rate right now. Like, that's crazy. Absurd. So, and you look at his defense, which he's always given good effort. It might not always be perfect form. He could be a little upright. He could be a little fidgety, but like, he's got recovery tools and he's giving effort. So, I look at a guy like Jaden McDaniels and he's not a sidekick to Ant necessarily, but on any given night, he can be. And he's at least always going to be somebody you could throw as a wing stopper. And I think that Noa Essengue has that kind of potential.
I think that's a good way to put it with him, with the floor for him as a player. And, one thing you'd be interested in is this week on Monday, I think it was, the NBA draft combine for the international players. They had their media roundtables. Everything was on Zoom because they're in different countries and everything overseas. I interviewed Noa Essengue and Ben Saraf. Well, as part of the media scrum, I should say. And I asked both of them similar questions because they both have a similar development this season. Since around early February, both of them are shooting over 80% from the free throw line. And so I asked each of them, is there something you guys are doing with your mechanics to become better shooters? Noa Essengue said, no, it's just all reps, just getting reps and all that. But Ben Saraf said something interesting. He said one of their coaches moved in, at least with him. I don't know about Noah. He said he moved his elbow in to get it better aligned with getting it underneath the ball. Like having an elbow in and elbow underneath the ball is the way he described it. And I just think it's interesting that both of these guys that display some touch, that display shooting potential, have both suddenly become much more reliable free throw shooters over the last 3-4 months. And so it's just something to note. When it comes to you look at their overall numbers over the course of the year, they were much worse. Both of them, I believe, both below 70% until early February. And since then, they've been much better. And that's something that I'm sure teams will care a lot about and want to investigate more when it comes to the decision of where to draft both Essengue and Saraf.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, an amazing point because you want to see guys who are on an upward trajectory with this
Progress,
stuff,
yes.
right? Yeah, you want that. And with a guy like Essengue, I think maybe the outside shot, it's still incredibly important because you need every player on the floor to stretch the floor now. But, for him, I think he's got a lot of other paths and avenues to be productive. With Saraf, I think that jumper is going to make or break who he is. Is he a starting level player? Is he a bench player? Is he even an
I
NBA
agree.
player? So,
Mhm.
and I want to like him so much, man. Watching these he does some stuff that I'm like, man, the frame is awesome. He's getting to the rim. He makes eye level reads. But that thing, when he shoots it from three, it looks like it's coming off
I
the
know.
rim like a rocket ship. So but he's so interesting, man. Both of those guys
He
are so interesting.
he had a funny thing. Somebody, one of the reporters asked him, "Who are your player comparisons?" And he mentions Halliburton. And
Okay.
I come in later. I was like, Ben, you wear number 77 and you decelerate at the rim and you kind of stop and go. Luka must be a player you've modeled your game after, like, right? Like, is that a comparison
Right.
for you? And he had like a big smile on his face. Well, saying it's like,
Yeah.
why didn't you just say Luka in the first place is somebody you model your game after and somebody you
Well,
like?
clearly Hoopers think that Halliburton is a much more attainable outcome, which is crazy because
But he
he's
wears
such an outlier
77.
special. I know.
He wears.
I don't even
Why
know how
else
many
would you wear
players it would have been
77?
until I don't. Of course, like but it's like wearing 99 in hockey. Like there's 23 in basketball. Like there's certain numbers that are special. It's funny. That is a funny story though.
No, I think you're right though with him. But Saraf does need to show a lot as a jumper. One last guy I want to talk to you about here, Ryan Kalkbrenner, super senior out of Creighton. On one hand, you could say the threshold for being a big that survives in the postseason is incredibly high. On the other hand, you can look at how physical this postseason is and how important rim protection is, and the fact he's flashed a jumper as well to space. With Kalkbrenner, are you higher, lower on him? Where are you at with him as an NBA playoff guy in the future?
I've always been a little like lukewarm on him, and I don't know what it was. Something this year made me go, all right, I think he's maybe turned a corner, or I've watched him for years being a New York guy at the Big East tournament and playing Big East teams. And, you go see him in person and he looks his listed. He's a massive, massive, massive dude. But watching these playoffs, the other thing I noticed is rookies don't play. So when we talk about win now players, I think that's something we almost have to eliminate from our vernacular. Like as much as I love Nick Clifford, you look at the rookies this year, old, young, they mostly don't play, except the big men. Quentin Post, Zach Edey, Khalil Ware. They were all getting minutes early on. So I think that there is a value play on top of the fact that, like you said, his shot has really developed. He's been insanely efficient at the rim. He's an incredible drop coverage big. He seems like a guy who can actually provide immediate value while doing a lot of the important big men stuff, setting strong screens, rolling to the hoop, finishing efficiently, cleaning up the garbage. I think he's a pretty good passer. I don't think he's, a Şengün, Jokic type guy by any stretch of the imagination, a Danny Wolf, maybe the weirdest, coolest player in this class. But he is just an effective player. And if that three ball does come along in a way where he speeds the release up and he starts getting it up at volume, now all of a sudden we look back and be like, man, Kalkbrenner, we probably overthought because he was, old or whatever the case is.
With Kalkbrenner, you mentioned the immediate value, and that's something I think that's worth thinking about. It might not change your rankings dramatically, but Kalkbrenner, if he's the 30th pick, he'll make $2.7 million as a rookie. And so
Huge.
If you're able to play a guy for 15 minutes a game or 20 minutes a game, and he makes $2.7 million when those guys who have rotation big men could make 10, 15, 20, sometimes more than that, that's absurd value. And so I do think that influences my rankings a bit if I'm thinking on I want somebody who plays right away. side of my brain rather than I'm taking big swings side of my brain. Because with
Right.
Kalkbrenner, it's all about priorities as a team. And so Kalkbrenner would be higher on my board if I'm a team that needs somebody right away. Year one, year two, I need minutes from a big man like the Suns at number 29. They should be looking for a big man. Kalkbrenner would be way high up on my board.
Totally. I was like, all right, this is like an early second round guy for a lot of, definitely coming into the year, for a lot of the year. And then it just gets to a point where a lot of these bets at the end of these rounds, you go, I think I'm going to strike out on this guy. Why am I overthinking somebody who I know is going to be good? And you look at the back end of the draft, you look at these guys who are these teams rather that are looking for these value plays on those cheap contracts. And I think that Ryan's a guy that is going to be able to actually make you go, all right, we feel comfortable that we're going to get that immediate production. Because that is the risk, right? If you're using that asset on somebody who you're hoping can immediately contribute because they're older and more experienced, and then they don't, it's like, well, what's the path? Because if they can't come in right away and play, like we might have whiffed on this one. But I think that this is a guy who's got a pretty safe floor. I mean, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards in the Big East. Like, he's got real skills and tools to hang his hat on that make me feel pretty confident in him.
I agree, Corey. Corey, tell everybody where they can find the draft guide at No Ceilings. Where can we find all your stuff?
Man, NoCeilingsNBA.com, No Ceilings NBA on social medias. We released the draft guide. We have our podcast that goes up multiple times a week. We're offering free content on the site Monday through Friday, off season, in season, whatever. We're there for you. We got you. So NoCeilingsNBA.com.
Corey, what you guys have created together is so awesome. It seriously is. It's just like, I think it's exactly what the NBA draft community needs and deserves. It's intelligent, it's entertaining, it's informative, it's beautiful, it looks good. You guys have created something pretty awesome together. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I told you off camera, but I want to give you your flowers on camera. You've been somebody that has been supportive of us, since basically our inception. And, I think in this community, it is a community. It's a rising tide lifts all boats situation. And, to wake up when I'm in Atlanta, booking my own flight, my own hotel room, trying to do this grind to go to the Overtime Elite Pro Day. And we wake up and we see, somebody who at the time we had never even really interacted to, reposting our preseason draft guide. That means a lot, man. And that's the kind of people that we need in this space. It doesn't have to be this vindictive, competitive space. It's lifting each other up and making each other better. And sure, we can joke around and be competitive and have that drive us. But at the end of the day, we have to look at each other as teammates. And you've always embodied that for us. So I want to, say thank you publicly to you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Corey. And it's easy to like you guys because I think you guys all show that with the way you put out your work. And like I said, it's entertaining and it's educational. Like you guys have like clear passion behind it collectively with everybody on the No Ceilings team. So thanks to you, really. Like thanks to you for creating what you do. So appreciate you joining me on this show today as well. We'll have to do some more pods in the future. This is good,
Let's
Corey.
do it, man. Let's do it.
Man.
Anytime. Thank you for having me, Kev.